Tony's here. I don't know if the audience.
Okay, so you just, I hear you just started it. I think David was here, and it looks to me like from the, unless my list is wrong, maybe my list is.
I'm seeing the top of his head.
Okay. We're all having issues tonight. Okay, well, let's get started then. We have our quorum. If we can maybe start with an attendance. Amanda, could you do that?
Yeah, hold on. I'm just getting all my ducks in a row. Opening up this. Okay. Seth Roy.
Here.
Michael Aronson.
Here,
Nina Aaron.
Here.
Bobby Bowker is not here. David Chow is here, but
I think he's having audio problems.
he's having audio issues. Alberto Fernandez is not here, and Eric Talbot.
Here.
And then Isabel Nguyen, we will need,
Here.
go ahead, is here, and we will need you to be an active voting member tonight.
Okay.
Isabel, I think you voted at every single meeting you've been to so far.
I think I voted in every one I attended except one.
Yeah, it's you know, I think people take that position of sort of like the extra and think, oh, I'm just gonna sit here, but
No such thing. I'm more than happy to participate.
Excellent. All right, cool. So let's get right into it. So actually the first item on our agenda is Birch Brook, and actually the applicant requested an adjournment. So that's adjourned for this meeting. But Jaime, can you just give us a brief update on what's going on over there?
yeah. So let me come on video. Apologies, I was eating a little bit of dinner. So 8189 South Highland. Essentially, they went in front of the EAC. They had to go in front of them a couple times to work out all the final details. The EAC provided their comments. So Birch Brook is still taking some time to respond to that, but you know, we took a look back and tried to see, was a tree permit granted when this was originally done? Obviously, we're kind of getting to the end of this process, so it's important to make sure that we sort of, you know, check all the boxes and verify that everything was done correct. Turns out there is no tree permit for this property. So Amanda spoke with the applicant's attorney today, informed them about the need to get a tree permit application. So they're going to fill that out as well. They're aware of it. But essentially, the way that the code works is that per 248-7D, it states that removal of any tree with a DBH 6 inches or greater on slopes over 25% or on any privately owned unimproved lot does require a tree permit application. So this is a privately owned unimproved lot, and they're going to have to get the tree permit from the board. So
On that, when I looked at the drawings, unless they've done something more, it looked like they didn't have in there anything about the actual tree species either. They just marked in a bunch of trees, but they didn't name the species, they didn't name condition, nothing. It was just a kind
you know,
of,
all of those trees are still there. So I think that what we did with 14 Water was we asked our own person to go out and kind of verify their tree survey that was prepared. In this case, we do the same thing. So I'm going to pull up real fast the, you know, the survey.
they didn't do much of a survey is my point. I mean,
Yeah,
to me,
yeah.
they should do their own work, but
Yes, yeah. I mean, they're going to want to do their own work because otherwise they're going to have to rely on our, you know, review of it. And I don't think they're going to want to do that either. But let me just pull up the survey. No, it's not the survey. That was something. I'll share my
it's been
screen.
a while since I looked at it, but I think they had named pines, but nothing else,
I think that's right.
I recall.
Yeah, so you can see how they sort of, they did a survey of the size, but not the type. You know, the type is going to be important to them, I think, but it's not necessarily 100% important to us, but we would
Well,
certainly-
I think it's important to us. I mean, if it's a Norway maple, that's a very different thing to a large native tree.
yeah, okay. So then we'll make sure that the inventory that they do includes, everything from type to size, DBH, as well
And
as the health of the tree.
Also health of the tree.
Yeah.
All right, so at least it's on our radar now. We'll be looking at this. I know we just went through this on a different scale with 14 Water Street. So that it's helpful to have that, but I guess there's really not too much for us to really discuss or look at tonight because this application is being adjourned, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of trees, so I mean, you can assume that it's gonna be a significant number.
Right.
That they're gonna come back with.
65, I think.
Right, times the
It is a
DBH
lot of
of
trees.
whatever they
Yeah.
all are. So to really do the assessment and what's the health of each of the trees. And then to have all of that corroborated by our professionals, and kind of use that to go forward. Okay, that's helpful. Thanks, Jaime. So let's kind of move forward to the next item, 173 and 175 North Highland. Jaime, if you could introduce what's going on there.
Yeah, so that's the Maple Lodge project, the property up on North Highland. The applicant provided a response to some of the questions that we asked for on 11/5/21. The application, the response was reviewed, and Keller Sessions provided an updated memo in response to all of those items. So there's still quite a bit of information that's outstanding. I'm going to try to give a good summary of what's missing, but this is not a full list. So first, the applicant still has not provided a surveyor prepared plat plan as requested, which would be the basis of the subdivision application, and has not provided an updated application as previously requested. The applicant has submitted plans that at the moment would require a variance. However, the applicant has not reflected this in the zoning worksheet and has not submitted a zoning variance application. So the plans must clarify how this will be handled, whether through a variance or through a modification to the existing plan. The applicant has not yet provided the inspection report regarding the sanitary sewers main that they stated they would provide. The applicant has not provided the requested detailed grading and retaining wall plan, and the notes have not been added to the site plan. The submitted erosion and sediment control plan needs to be revised and to include additional information previously requested. The requested photometric plan has not been provided. The SWIP must be revised in response to the comments provided by Keller Sessions and other comments that should be satisfied as requested. With this, and at this point, really the application is still incomplete, pending resolution of all these substantive comments. It's important to note that one of the items that is extremely important is kind of the central sort of first step for this project is that plat plan. The plat plan is the subdivision that has to take place in order to create the new lots. And so to give a little background history to this, it's multiple lots. They want to put a snack shop, gas station in the front, and they want to sort of change the dimensions of the lot in the back to serve that. Part of the reason is because you can only have one primary use on any given lot, so you do have to have a subdivision of those two lots. But in order to create the space for the gas station and the snack shop, they're going to have to eat into some of the space, the parking spaces, and that's going to cause a reconfiguration of how it's going to, how that lot is going to work. So in order to know what we're dealing with, we need to have a surveyor prepared plat plan. So you can't do a subdivision. You can't, if there's no subdivision, then you can't do site plan approval. You can't do the site plan approval. Obviously nothing can move forward. So we need that basic information.
Yeah, no, look, this has been batted back and forth. I read through in detail the Keller Sessions letter that they issued this week. And it really just seems like we've barely moved the needle. We have a lot to, it's a big job. There's a lot going on, and like you said, between the plat, the application, some really basic pieces are missing. For us to sit here and spend a whole bunch of time talking about it, discussing it, reviewing it, when we don't really have the full picture, like I don't think it's fair to other people on this agenda. I don't think it's fair to us on the board. I think we need to have a complete application, a complete response, one that our professionals can look at and, and at least feel is progress. I don't know how other board members feel, but I just don't know why we should be spending time on this until they've actually gotten this together for us in a meaningful way.
I agree.
Yeah, I would, I mean, and, this, of course, is not the first time this board has seen this project. I mean, we approved it in 2019, and now there's just so many still outstanding items that need to be addressed, and it seems that I agree with you, Seth, that it wouldn't be worth our time or the public's time or any other agenda participants to spend time on this until it's more complete.
I agree too. The application has to be completed. And then we can look at it. And professional staff can look at it.
Okay.
I agree at the same time. I think it should be complete before we laid eyes on it.
Yeah, so I think that's, we're on the same page with this. So, I mean, do we have to have a procedural vote on this, Amanda or Jaime? Or how do we move forward? Look, we'll wait till they're ready, and then we'll review their complete response and application.
If you'd like, since they didn't request an adjournment, you can take a vote to adjourn the application.
Okay, that makes sense. Can we have a motion?
Well, I'm sorry, just a quick question, Amanda, before we do that, since we don't know how long it's going to take for them to actually address all these issues, when we adjourn, do we specify a date or just a date unknown?
You don't need to necessarily adjourn it to the next meeting. You can say adjourn the application until a date when the applicant provides the requested information and, responses.
Okay.
And I guess we should just mention that I don't know how many adjournments this application has had, but there are also renoticing requirements potentially.
Yeah, there are. After three consecutive adjournments, then they have to renotice.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think, can we have then a motion to adjourn? I think per Amanda's comments until they're ready.
Okay, Michael Aronson, motion to adjourn the item until the application is complete and outstanding comments have been addressed.
Nina Aaron, second.
And we'll do a roll call here.
All right, Seth Roy,
Aye.
Michael Aronson,
Aye.
Nina Aaron,
Aye.
David Chow is not here anymore.
Looks
Sorry.
like David stepped away. Yeah.
Oh,
There he is.
he's back.
What?
He's back, but there's no microphone next to his name, so I think he's having a hard time connecting to audio.
Okay, so we will consider him not
Oh.
here. But David,
Oh, you've muted yourself now, David. Unmute and try to talk.
hello, David. Oh, hi.
Can
Can you
you
hear us?
guys hear me?
Yes.
Can
Can you
thank you.
guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you
Thank
know
you.
what motion we're taking?
Sorry.
So David, I don't know if you heard what we just discussed. We were making a motion to adjourn the matter of 173 and 175 North Highland until they were prepared and had a complete response to the building department and the engineering comments
And it's,
and application. Sorry, go ahead, Amanda.
I didn't hear everything, but I didn't hear everything, but I agree with everything you guys have done.
okay, so I think that we have 1, 2, 3. So are you voting in favor of that motion to adjourn, David?
Yes, please.
Okay. Eric Talbot,
Aye.
and then Isabella, sorry, not Isabella, Isabel Nguyen.
Aye.
Sorry about that. Okay. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor.
6 yeas in favor, so the motion passes. Awesome. All right, so thanks. Let's move on now, I think, to the next item, which I guess that's 78 Croton Avenue is next item on the agenda. That's adjourned. Do we have anything to mention on that one, Jaime?
78 Croton Ave. No, it's just adjourned pending zoning board action. So just on the zoning board side, we're waiting on some documentation there. Hopefully we'll get what we need from the zoning board so the zoning board can act at the next meeting. There's been a lot of internal discussion about how to try to get that project moving forward, and hopefully it will. So if all things work out, then the 21st you'll be in a position to do something. So we'll see.
All right. Then up to agenda item number 4, which is 136-140 Croton Avenue. So if you can,
go through. I'm going to kind of try to start here with a little bit of an overview and then talk about goals for today's meeting. I think that, I hope to spend a lot of time talking about this particular application, but kind of focus it in. So there are 3 matters. The variance have been laid out. The variances that are needed for this application have been laid out. The building inspector was finally able to get the referral letter together. We had to kind of work and consult with the BFJ to make sure that, that it met all of the criteria that we needed to because of the sort of different nature of this application. So that has been put together. It's been provided to the applicant. So we'll go over that in a minute. 2 of the items that we want to cover today, one is, hopefully can open a public hearing. I think that there may be some people from the neighborhood here today. I'm not sure, but certainly at least start getting the discussion and like to go over the seeker process. So, one of the things that you're going to need to do is sort of start taking a look at the the long form and also some of the supplemental documentation that they provided, as well as try to lay out if there are any specific environmental questions that you really think merit more study to go over that. So, first, just let me pull up the variance, the referral letter, and we'll start from there. So, why am I getting all these pop-ups? Okay, so it needs area variances from the form-based code. It also needs site plan and it's going to need some ARB work. So number 1, site plan approval for the proposed new mixed-use building, which you know about. There's the BAR approval. There's going to be area variances regarding minimum habitable space, square footage for the apartments, variance for the building coverage percentage. It's going to require variance for the number of off-street parking, and it's going to require variances for the maximum height permitted proposed building. I think it's actually missing another thing because there's a setback connected with the form-based code as well. So, so today I think you are in a position to sort of refer it out to the zoning board for review of those. But there's a multi-step process here. You need to go through seeker obviously first and make a determination on seeker before the zoning board can act, and then the zoning board is going to have to act on their variances before the planning board can go back and act on any of the planning board actions. So the goal is kind of to get all this stuff rolling, and kind of once it gets to the zoning board, take the temperature of the zoning board in regards to those variances before you make a decision on the seeker stuff down the road.
And I would assume this is the first form-based zoning project that the ZBA would be reviewing, as it is for us.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, is there anything new? I mean, I think we should at some point we should bring the applicant in if there's. I mean, they can be here to answer questions for us. I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah. So we have the applicant here, and I will bring them in there.
So we'll bring them in, and I guess board members, kind of any feedback or comments. I guess this, we declared lead agency last week, so that per Jaime's comments, the secret questions are probably going to be primary, and any concerns that we have, regarding that, or areas of focus that we should be thinking about. I don't know the best way to scaffold that right now, but if we kind of start off with kind of questions or responses from the board, I think the one thing that sticks out to me right now, and I do want to open the public hearing tonight, and I know there was a letter that went out, but really looking at how this fits in with with the neighborhood, both in terms of scale and the character, is one area I think that we should be kind of attending to as we do the secret review. But other kind of, go ahead, Jaime, you're about to.
Yeah. So let me, you can finish. I apologize.
No, that's it's all right. Go ahead.
So we have Jacqueline Tyler is the architect on this project. Michael Zarin is the attorney. John Cannon is planning. We also have Franz Lockie here, and Joe Apicella is the managing partner of McQuestion.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mr. Chairman, should we start? Jaime, should we just begin our presentation, or?
I mean, if you have a presentation, I think a brief presentation, because I know that we've kind of seen the project, any notable changes, for 2 minutes, just to kind of go over what you have would be great.
Sure. Good evening. My name's Michael Zarin, law firm Zarin Steinmetz. I think Jaime just introduced our team, so you have us all here tonight. I guess this is going to be the first opening of the public hearing. So for anyone who's not familiar with the project, we thought we'd give a very quick overview, as well as try to touch on some of the items that were raised in the comment letters from your planners, BFJ, and from Kellett Session, as well as respond to some of the issues we heard raised at the last meeting. For those that don't know, it's a mixed use senior affordable. I think it's pretty apropos in the national dialogue going on now that most of you are aware of, and trying to have a consensus on how do we build more affordable housing in the country, high quality affordable housing. That's the challenge. This is going to be for persons 62 and older. It's a very something in high demand, affordable for seniors. It's about a 3.5 story. I think you'll agree. This is first-rate architectural design engineering. This is not just and I'll let Mr. Apicella from McQuestion talk about a little bit about the background experience and the type of housing they build. We've provided you to date with a long list of documents and analysis as part of your review: traffic and parking analysis, full design drawings, architecture, zoning analysis, full responses, as you saw, to the comments, the multi-page comments that were made by BFJ and Kellett Sessions. And the whole idea is to try to narrow the issues, be responsive to yours, and each meeting try to narrow the issues more and more. As Jaime said, tonight, we hope to come away with obviously the formal referral to the ZBA, being the first form-based zoning project. The whole issue of variances and getting there was a little bit of a give and take, and I think we're in a good place, and we're ready to go to the ZBA and make our case on a couple of those issues. I assume you're going to accept lead agency under SECRA. I think last meeting you indicated your intent to be lead agency. Tonight, I'm sure counsel and I will tell you, I think you need to accept lead agency if for any reason you haven't done already. Jaime mentioned that, and I think you're going to want to let us know if there's any additional documentation or analysis you need from us as we go through this process, so that you take the necessary hard look under SECRA. So, we're going to make a very short presentation. Jacqueline from Nexus Creative Designs, gonna address maybe a little bit of the massing and architectural and design issues that have been raised by you in the previous meeting, as well as some of the comment that we received. Then John Canning is going to address the important issue of parking. We've done a lot of work in that, and parking, transportation, and before we get into it, Joe Apicella is going to give a very short presentation on their background. Our job is to, narrow the list of open issues and provide you what you need to make an informed and thoughtful decision in the most efficient and reasonable manner. I mean, I think you have a very experienced team on this end. We're responsive. We've done this once or twice. We've watched you. We know you're a board that, wants answers, wants information. That's our job, to give it to you. So we will try to be responsive to you, and hopefully we can move the process along as quickly as possible, but do it in a comprehensive and meaningful manner. So I'll just turn it over to Joe, and again, we're here for whatever you need. So Joe.
Mr. Chairman, in keeping with your edict to try to keep this brief, and thank you so much for your time, I'm going to do that. Just two items, just to recap from a resume and background standpoint. Our firm for the last 30 years has built high quality, affordable housing, sustainable affordable housing. We have done and continue to do projects and energy efficient projects before cogeneration and the like was fashionable. We've done projects in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Yonkers, senior housing project in Yonkers, New Rochelle, transformative project in New Rochelle, and Mount Vernon. We are ready and able to do this project. We are based right here in Westchester County. We build our projects to build and hold and manage. We have a management arm of our company known as Cornell Pace. This particular project is 77 units. One of those units will be allocated to the superintendent's unit. We are looking at a 40, 60, and 80% AMI blend over this project. We have studios, we have 30 studios, 46 one-bedroom and 1 2-bedroom unit based on our experience of the market. This will be financed through New York State HCR, Housing Community Renewal, where we've done many projects before. We are an MWBE company. Rella Foliano is our principal, and I'm a partner and the managing director of development for the project. This will be, and we have applied for a brownfield tax credit site where we have much experience doing brownfield tax credits. I will go on to say and reiterate what Mike said. This is not a 55 and older. This is a 62 and older project under the New York State programs. So it's a little bit different as it relates to requirements for parking and traffic and the like. Sustainability at the heart of planning, design, and the construction strategy for our project. Focus on affordable housing is efficient solutions to reduce energy consumption and environmental conditions. Requested includes a combination of energy efficient and environmental and community sustainable strategies requiring third-party oversight. For this project, Enterprise Green Communities 2020 certification, and we also would like to meet the EPA Energy Star standards. All of our appliances are Energy Star. We intend this building to be a LEED Silver building or better, and that's what we will shoot for and what we've done in the past. We're looking at staying away from gas. This will be an electric heat pump system, and we believe it to be very good as it relates to a carbon footprint and the like. The alignment, again, with New York State electrification objectives. The building will be a fossil fuel-free building with the latest in heat pump technology, thereby minimizing emissions and maximizing the utility incentives. We intend on working with NYSERDA for our utility incentives. I don't want to go on too greater because I want to try to keep to a short period of time, but that'll give you a brief overview as to how we plan on approaching this project in our history.
Thank you, Mr. Apicella.
Okay, this time, Nexus Creative Design, Jacqueline will
Yeah.
give it up.
Thank you, everybody. I'm able to share screen. Is that correct?
I'm it.
Yes, I'm in. That's okay, right? Okay. So I'm just gonna walk you
Just make sure
through-
that everything that you're presenting is what you
Correct.
submitted already. Okay.
Yep, these are pulled up from the agenda. So we're,
Thank
yep.
you.
So I'm just gonna walk you through the changes. I know that we briefly went over them verbally at the last meeting. However, we hadn't submitted the drawings yet. So now we have the drawings with us this evening in order to walk through those changes. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, we were able to pull back the corner of Croton and Prospect. That was one of the concerns with this being over the buildable line. So we have eliminated the need for a variance on this edge here. We also were able to pull everything is within the build to line with the exception of this corner of Prospect and Croton. And what we just want to point out here, we still feel that this is within the intent of the form-based code. We are looking at the fact that the Croton Avenue along this corridor does stretch out to about 32 feet. It's the widest area along Croton Avenue and for about 225 linear feet along here. So we do feel that although we are outside of the build to line, we are still within the build to line based on the setback from the curb. So we are maintaining that form-based notion continuing all along Croton Avenue. So that in regards to setbacks is the only setback variance that we're asking for is along that corner of Prospect and Croton. I want to walk you through some of the massing changes that we've made. And they've actually aligned with the comments that we did receive back in the BFJ memo, specifically at that Prospect and Croton corner. Just going to flip over to the renderings because I feel like it's easiest for us to view them in the massing here. So one of the comments that was made was looking at this corner. And so what you'll see is that we've actually pulled back the building at this edge in order to maintain the 3-story element at the corner of Prospect and Croton. We also, as you go across the site, what we need to realize is that we do surprisingly let me go back to your floor plan. From the one corner of our property to the other, we have a grade difference of 27 feet. So we just wanted to emphasize that. So from this corner over here, the far southeast over to the northwest, there's a grade drop of 27 feet from one side to the other. So we wanted to emphasize that. That's where some of these verticality challenges have come into play, is accommodating that 27-foot grade change. So when I go back to the massing here, what you'll notice is we've really attempted to try to keep the building in that 3.5 story range throughout at all of the corners. What you will see is we do have underground parking by the time you get over up into the southwest corner. So you do have what appears to be 4 stories with one of those being the parking area. We are looking at the heights and we're working with the village on the variances for the heights. That's what's submitted in these diagrams here that were presented to you earlier. I think that's it for architecture. We have a number of different units, as Jaime mentioned earlier. There's a few of these that do require a variance, but most of them were able to fit within the within Austening's requirements for the habitable areas. These we can walk through. I know we want to keep things short. We don't have to walk through these tonight. We know that we'll be moving forward, but these are some diagrams that will continue to evolve, just demonstrating again the form-based intent for the mix of the build to lines, providing landscape buffers at the front area, as well as public courtyards. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to John, just because I know that we want to hit on the traffic and parking areas. I'll go ahead and switch over to the parking plan. So I have that up, John, while you're presenting.
Very much, Jacqueline. Good evening, members of the board. For the record, my name is John Canning. I work for Kinley Horn. I'm a traffic engineer, parking engineer, and we're providing traffic and parking services for this mixed-use senior affordable development. As was mentioned, there are 77 affordable units.
Apologize, it's really hard to understand what's being said. I don't know if anybody else is having issues.
It's hard to understand. To hear me?
Yeah, it feels like you're real far away.
Let me see if I can switch to a headset. Sorry, thank you, honey. Otherwise, I'll speak up.
What?
No, are you, yeah, switching over?
I'm trying.
I think if you speak loudly and it's kind of closer to your device, I think.
Okay, so how's this?
Yeah,
Better?
I can understand you.
Okay, and I'll try and speak a little slower. So as you know, it's 77 affordable units, 62 and older, plus 1 unit for the superintendent. 79 parking spaces are proposed. That's 1 for every unit. There's 2 parking levels. This is the lower level. You can come in from Prospect and go out to Croton. And then on the upper level, there's most of the spaces are on this level, 52. And then on the upper level, which is accessed from Watson, there are 27 spaces. There's also a modest amount of neighborhood retail and flex community space, 3,500 square feet. From a traffic and parking perspective, the good news about this is that seniors drive less and own fewer cars than non-seniors. So if this was a typical residential multifamily development, there would be more traffic and parking. This is documented by industry data published by the Institute of Transportation Engineers, which is an independent professional society. And it's also documented from 10 studies of similar facilities in Westchester and Nassau counties that actually accommodate 55 and older residents. And we will be providing this data in our next submission. Although the code requires 124 parking spaces, the 79 provided will actually be well more than are needed. ITE data indicates a peak parking demand for this type of facility of just 47 vehicles, which is 32 fewer than the number of spaces provided. And based on local data, the similar facilities in Westchester and Nassau, where the age restriction was 55, the projected peak parking demand is 54 vehicles, which is 25 vehicles less than the number of spaces proposed. So clearly, in my professional opinion, there is more than adequate parking in this building to accommodate all of its needs. From a traffic perspective, the project is projected to generate just 11 more trips in the weekday peak hour than the former nursery business did on the site during the busiest hour of the day. And actually, during the busiest hour on a Saturday, the project is projected to generate 19 fewer trips than the former nursery, based on Institute of Transportation Engineers data. In absolute numbers, it will generate a maximum of just 41 trips in the busiest hour, which is 2 trips every 3 minutes. So as you can see, the benefit of having a senior residential development is a relatively low trip generation. We do not expect the project to have any traffic or parking impacts. We have received your comments. We will be evaluating the operating conditions of the site driveways and the intersections of Croton Avenue with Prospect Avenue and Watson Avenue. And we will be conducting midday and midnight surveys of on-street parking in the area to assess the existing parking situation. So that's kind of where we stand at this point in time. We look forward to hearing your comments and answering any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, before we turn it over for any questions or as you move the meeting, I just wanted to point out our engineer from SESI has also submitted a 8-page point-by-point response to every one of Kellard's comments, and we will be submitting at the next meeting a revised plan as indicated in that, showing the modifications to the plans per the various engineering comments. Also, I don't know whether Mr. Canning mentioned, but I think it's important, and I don't know a lot of you, but I often act as like special counsel for municipalities. I've been on your side of the table. And I think that the chart that Mr. Canning included, the letter in our submission to the board, it was done by another very well-respected affordable housing builder, Wilder Bolter Partners, looking at actual, I think it was about 10 projects, actual projects in the Hudson Valley and Long Island that had these types of affordable seniors, looking at real-time number of units, number of parking spaces used per unit. And this is important. You have your modeling, as John mentioned, but many of the boards ask us to go out and get some real-time numbers. And if you look at that chart that's attached to the submission we made to the board, the average is, and these again, 10 real projects, very similar to ours, 0.69 cars per unit. And you know, that's not that far off. The actual ITE, I believe, is somewhere in the range of 0.61 or 0.6 or something like that. So it's very close. And so just pointing that out, that we're not just throwing out just numbers from institutional, but we actually went out and worked with, John worked with Bolter in creating this chart previously. So it's important figures for you, and empirical data, as they say.
Thank you. I mean, a lot has been put out there. You know, I think it'd be, I think at this point, helpful to just kind of hear initial reactions from the board. I know there's, you know, the massing was a focus of the presentation, parking obviously as well. Some thoughts. I just would like to open this to the board right now as far as where our thought processes may be.
Mr. Chairman, can I make one quick comment that I left? I did want to point out, I know that there's been discussion from the public about the height. I just want to point out, I didn't mention this in the massing, the 350, the height of 350 that is indicated on SK 13. I want to clarify that is to the peak of the ridge. So at the boundaries of the building, that 350'3" ranges, you know, much less anywhere from the 35 feet down to, you know, along the south edge, we are roughly around 344 feet. So I just wanted to clarify that point for everybody.
I mean, is there a neighborhood section or either an elevation from both of the streets, Prospect and Watson, that just shows, you know, orthographically the relationship of this to the nearest neighbors?
We do not have one cut all the way through besides these views, and sorry, one other elevation view. So no, we don't have that. We can prepare that for the next meeting though.
Yeah, I think
Yeah, we have this view, which it cuts off here. It doesn't go through that whole street though.
Right. I think on both sides,
right,
on both the
we can prepare that for the next meeting.
Would be very helpful. So, and I think it just kind of on that conversation and looking at these elevations and this kind of intent to keep this at, you know, we keep on referring to this as a 3.5 story development, and I appreciate the grade change, but even, you know, I guess you're referring to it as the west elevation, where you cut off the corner, it still kind of reads as a 4-story kind of moving up that hill. And I just wonder if there was more that could be done to, you know, in terms of setbacks around the perimeter of the building to really keep the height from reading down. It looks really large, and it's kind of, and it steps up as you go up the hill. So it's not even like you're mitigating that height as you go up the hill, you're kind of extending it as you keep going up.
Yeah, that's why I think the renderings are a much better depiction of what's happening with the grade that we were mentioning along here, along this side here.
It's still, even in the renderings though, I mean, you're, you know, where you kind of have a subtle setback along Croton, at the corner of Croton and Prospect, a part of that volume, but then you kind of continue back to what looks like a 4-story building until you kind of get to the very corner where the slope kind of increases more severely. I think trying to keep that elevation down. I mean, that's that's a lot of facade right there on that street. But I would like to open this up to other board members as well for questions and comments on what was a pretty lengthy presentation here. So
I had one question on the parking. And you're looking at some retail, is that correct? On the ground floor?
That is correct, yes. There's 2 spaces, each are about 1,600 square feet. One's on the left end, the uphill, the downhill end, and one is on the right end, the uphill end.
So are you looking at any parking related to those retail spaces?
So we are looking into that. The presumption is that there would be some sort of shared parking. So the peak parking demand is overnight, and then during the day, a number of the residents are out. So it's something that we're looking into.
other board member questions at this point?
I don't really have any other questions except just to concur with your statements about wanting to see this in the context of the adjacent side streets. And, you know, just sort of the overwhelming appearance in terms of the bulk and massing at this point. But I would like to see, and I know there may be some comments from the public as well, but I would like to see that in context of the side streets.
Actually, is there a, I guess it would be a southerly elevation, the rear elevation of the facade, and those, I think on that elevation sheet that you had up a moment ago, Jacqueline. So, right, because that's the face that's being presented to, you know, the rest of the neighborhood, right? That's the backyards of the folks living on those two streets.
Yeah, so this is cut on our property as opposed to up, so on the southern edge, there's a hill with the retaining wall all along there. So this is cut down adjacent to the building.
So that retaining wall that you see on the, I'll just use on the right side of that, where it's leveled off, that's part of your rear yard?
Yes, this is our rear yard. So essentially, as you step back, there's a nut, you can see it, and you can actually see it in here. The grade of the neighboring property is up higher along both of these as they go up. So this is cut right at our building line, you know, as the grade slopes down towards our building.
Understood.
But Mr. Chairman, I think providing you a perspective will be beneficial to all of us. So we will do that in fairly short order.
Thank you. So if we don't have any other questions or comments right now from the board, I think it would be a good time to see if there's anybody here from the public, and we haven't opened a public hearing yet on this. So if board members agree, maybe we could have a motion to open the public hearing at this point.
Michael Aronson, motion to open a public hearing.
Nina Aaron, second.
Any objections? No objections, the motion passes. All right, so we are now in a public hearing. And I'd like to welcome, if there's anybody from the public who's present in the meeting who would like to speak, you can raise your hand. Seeing anybody, Jaime?
Yeah, we don't have anything, but I did get it. I got some comments from Mr. Creasy. I thought he was going to be here today. He mentioned in an email earlier today that he was going to send, but he sent a letter earlier today. I'm going to read that into the record since he's not here. He actually sent some comments a few months ago, asking some questions, but he wrote, "Dear members of the board, in reviewing the proposed project of 136-140 Croton Avenue, it has come to my attention that the pictures A7.1 or SK10 used to show the view from the south of the proposed project are inaccurate." Let me actually share the screen because it's got some images as well. According to the survey included in the application, my house at 4 Watson Avenue's base is at an elevation of 317 feet 6 inches. Survey attached. When I measured my house from that point, it measured 19 feet high. This would make the total elevation of the top of my house to be roughly 336 feet. If you look at the pictures submitted by the applicant, it appears that my roof and the roof of the proposed project are roughly equal, which would make the top elevation of the project about the same at 336 feet. According to SK13, in their submission, the max height of the roof is 353 inches. This is significantly higher than 336. Also from the survey, the house on Prospect is roughly 8 feet lower than my house, so I'd estimate the total elevation of 328. This would put the max height of the roof is 353. It's at a significantly higher than how it is portrayed in the picture. I have attached from their submission SK10, which shows the view they've presented. I've used a scaling of 1 inch equals 60 feet based on the height of my house. I've added the additional height that was left off, which significantly changes the view and the impact on my house and the houses south of the project. I've also attached the picture of what it would look like from my backyard. I'm more than happy to set up an appointment with the applicant to have access to my property so that they can provide an accurate representation of what the proposed plan would look like. Sincerely, James P. Creasy. And so what he's referencing here is, these images in particular. So the images are available to you. These are posted on the agenda, so you can review them at your leisure.
Yeah, and I know that Ms. Tyler I think referred somewhat to this in her presentation, looking at where the ridge of the roof. I think there's like a faux pediment that was extending up as a high point as well. But I think that kind of goes back to the comments that we were having before. I think it really is important, both in terms of the perspective drawings, then also some sections in orthographic drawings that kind of describe the relative height, so we can really kind of see that. Perspectives can be tricky.
Yeah, and since he has offered for us to visit the property, we would be happy to do so in order to make sure that everything is scaled properly. So we appreciate that offer by him.
Fair enough. Any other public comments right now, Jaime? Looks like no hands, right?
Hands.
Okay.
There is one comment that I wanted to make. So it wasn't mentioned here earlier, but there has been a meeting already by Keller Sessions and I think somebody from Sexy earlier. So they're starting work on a construction management plan and just sort of laying out that path. So we know obviously that there's this project, if approved, would have a significant impact on the street. And so they're going to be preparing a construction management plan for the board to look at in the future.
Yeah, there were comments on that and demolition plans and the like that we're starting to work collaboratively with your people to formulate. Take that stuff.
And I know that this kind of somewhat related. This site is all, there's plywood around the perimeter of the site right now, and but there is no structure currently on the site, correct?
I was just about to clarify that. No, there's no demolition required. But I have met with the neighbor, the commercial neighbor, the music Risco, if I'm correct.
Yes. Mike Risco.
Mike Risco and his wife, who I actually didn't realize I knew until I got there, but I had done some business with them in the past, and they have concerns about construction impacts there. They indicated that they like the use and to see the area get reclaimed and cleaned up, and they share that thought, but they're also concerned about the construction impact and dust and other things. I explained to them, while we can mitigate a lot of those concerns, there are certain concerns when you construct that you just can't mitigate. There'll be a period of time when there is, pursuant to the code, there'll be construction and loud activity. But nonetheless, I thought it was important to meet with them early on. And my intent with them and any other of the people in the area, residential or commercial, that are concerned, I will, as we always do in Westchester, give them a direct connect to our construction manager on the site, so they could have a heads up, if you will, on activities and hours and what's going to happen. I think communication is critical, and when it comes to the construction phase of the project.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to clarify what Mr. Apicella said. The term demolition plan was used by your by Kellett Sessions in connection with doing some road improvement work and some of the site work. So correct, there's no major structures, but it's just a technical term for that type of road and those improvements. So
Very good. All right, well, we're still right now in the public hearing. I think we have a couple of kind of things that we can decide on right now in terms of, at least actions that we can take, including the referral. So I think if there's no one else from the public at this point, we could adjourn the public hearing for now. We have a motion from the board.
Eric Talbot, I'll make a motion to adjourn public hearing.
Minor Aaron, second.
Any objections? There are no objections. The motion passes. The public hearing is adjourned. So I guess at this, I don't know if we have any other comments or questions from the, but we have, I think, I actually want to clarify one point, and maybe Amanda, I know the lead agency declaration, was this where did we, can you just remind me where we stood with that? I know there was a point made earlier during the presentation regarding.
Yes, and I was going to clarify that. So back at the October meeting, October 23rd, I believe, your board declared its intent to be lead agency. Then notice of that intent was circulated. I know that Attorney Zarin indicated that you might be taking a formal step to indicate that you're going to be indeed, taking on the responsibility of lead agency, but we typically don't do that in the village. I mean, 30 days has passed for any of the other involved agencies to step up and say, we want to be lead agency. None of them have done that. So at this point, you are, by default, the lead agency. So I would not, I wouldn't, so what I'm looking for.
You don't need to affirmatively vote towards that.
Yeah, because you haven't done it in the past and the 30 days has run, so you're fine. You're lead agency.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks for that
Right.
clarification.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the next point would be the Cba referral, and I do have one question on that as well, because it sounds like there was the Bill 2 line item, which was not listed on the letter.
Yeah. So I apologize. I'm going to check with Joe. I think that it's possible that he finalized the memo. We may have just uploaded the wrong letter and not the correct letter. There's some other items that are also supposed to be on there. There's the BOT, affordable housing, density bonus, which needs to be listed in the referral letters. So we'll get that fixed, but I think that we are ready. I think you're in a position to make that referral, even if that item is missing off the list.
Okay, I think that's fair. Do we have a motion from the board to make the ZBA referral?
Michael Aronson, motion to refer to the ZBA.
Eric Talbot, I second the motion.
And we'll do a roll call.
Seth Roy?
Aye.
Michael Aronson?
Aye.
Nina Aaron?
Aye.
David Chow?
Aye.
Eric Talbot?
Aye.
And Isabel Nguyen.
Aye.
Okay. 6-0 in favor.
And the only thing I would say is, Jacqueline, if you could follow up with us tomorrow in regards to getting the proper referral letter, so you make sure that the noticing is done correctly.
Is
Jacqueline or whoever it is that's going to be handling the noticing.
Jaime, is Joe out of the office until Monday?
I'm sure he'll take a phone call, so we'll figure it
All
out.
right, I just wanted to, just in case we need to,
I think
have our
I don't think he's out of town. He's around. He's still working. He's just at home right now. So
okay, well,
he's got a lot of vacation days. The man doesn't get any time off. So
well, okay, gotcha.
we'll figure it out.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, everybody. I think we'll see you next time. And
Well, before
Yeah.
you close this out, Seth,
yep.
we could, I know, we didn't spend too much time talking about the the sort of the scope of the seeker process. You know, the long form EF has been around for some time. I just want to make sure that are there any other, you know, major areas that you'd like to see covered in the environmental review process? Are there any things that you're concerned about, or any things that, you know, more information that you'd like to have them provide? Just to give them a clearer path moving forward.
I think along with the, you know, looking at the elevations and bulk and stuff is also shade. Any issues with shading on those neighboring properties?
I just wanted to clarify something. I know earlier there was a mention of applying for brownfield tax credit. So is this an official brownfield site? Have phase 1 borings and testing been done yet? I'm not sure of, you know, where in the process that would take place, but I'm just curious if it's officially a brownfield site. And if so, if you have an idea of what type of remediation might be needed on the site.
So yes, we have done both a phase 1 and phase 2 study. Our environmental attorney has made application to New York State DEC. There are a number of, we have every indication based on her experience that in fact this will rise to the level based on the level of contaminant that both at the groundwater level and in terms of the USTs, underground storage tanks, that this will rise to the level of a brownfield cleanup site. So we will probably get a response from DEC, I would say within 4 to 6 weeks, as to whether or not we will formally be accepted into the New York State brownfield. But we've done all of the invasive testing that's required up to this point.
That's good to know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Would you be willing to share the phase 1 and phase 2 reports with the board?
Absolutely.
That would be helpful for SECRA.
Yeah, I think we're also going to need a lighting plan. So if we can get the photometric plan for the property lighting, that would be helpful.
Jacqueline?
Yes.
The photometric lighting plan.
Yeah, we'll add that to the list. Can somebody clarify for me, because I know that we had up through December. Can someone clarify when the January meeting is and what the submission date is?
Jamie? Probably around the 14th.
I don't have the calendar with me right now. I can email you tomorrow. If you like.
Okay, thanks.
Any other comments related to the SECRA review from the board? Okay, so we'll keep looking at that and try to update this conversation next time. All right, so if there are no other comments, I think at this point.
I apologize. It's just one real quick. If you haven't provided it, I know that we have a some stuff regarding the slopes, but if you have like a grading plan or anything of that nature, I just want to make sure that sometimes there's this issue of like going above 25% slopes, and you do have some steep slopes in some of the corners. So we just want to make sure that you're not going to trigger any actions that deal with the steep slopes ordinance, which is essentially anything over 25%.
Right.
Will trigger a decision by the planning board on that. So
Yeah, we have a grading plan, but we can put together a steep slopes diagram as well.
Yeah.
To simplify it for you.
There's an existing retaining wall on the back of that lot.
Correct. Yes, that's essentially, I believe, a number of the when Kellard sent the memo about the demo, that was a good portion of what was referring to.
Okay. All right, Jaime, anything else from your end as far as documentation?
No, I mean, I'm kind of going through the long form just to make sure I didn't miss anything. And, but I think that kind of covers most of the items. You know, the Keller Sessions memo covers a lot of other items as well. So there's a lot there. I think that I'm guessing based off of your response a moment ago, Jacqueline, you're looking to get all this stuff in by January's meeting. Probably not the short turnaround time that we have.
We're always trying. We'll always try.
Look, it's great. If you want an adjournment for December, I'm sure no one will be mad a few days before Christmas to have a shorter meeting. So.
Excellent. All right. This time, I mean, so this time we're good. All right. So thank you, everybody. I think we can move on now to the next agenda item. Give you guys a moment to disconnect and
Thank you,
see
Mr.
you guys.
Thank you.
All right. See you in January. It sounds like.
All right.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Holidays. Yeah.
Same to you. Okay. Now my agenda is missing an address and just has my notes on it. So the next is it's also a Croton Avenue address, and Jaime, you're gonna have to help me out here because my handwritten notes are illegible. Which one?
31 Croton Avenue?
31 Croton Avenue is the one. That's the one piece of missing information. I got all my other notes there. So 31 Croton Avenue is next. And Jaime, you can kind of give us the
yeah,
rundown.
great. So 31 Croton Avenue is a existing, it's an existing building that currently has some residential units and commercial space on the bottom of the property. It has no parking on site. It is kind of, you know, sort of an older building. I think it's about 100 years old. The applicant is proposing to convert it to a fully residential building. It's going to need, you know, a use variance. At the last meeting, they were hoping to go through the form-based code, but we kind of took a look at it and worked with BFJ to do a review on it. It was determined at that time that it really wasn't probably best under the form-based code, that it would be an easier lift to send it to the zoning board for a use variance. You know, so what we did was we provide them a referral form, an updated referral form. So what needs to happen today is that we need to go, you're gonna need to make that referral official to the zoning board. It's gonna require seeker. So I don't know if this board wants to move forward with declaring intent to be lead agency at this point, or if you wanna, you know, take your time to think about it. But that does need to take place, obviously, because of the use variance. They also have a parking waiver. And so the details of the parking waiver are, you know, in the application, but essentially, if you review the Keller Sessions review memo, you'll see that the parking requirements under the current use and the parking requirements under the proposed expanded residential use and sort of further development of the site are pretty much the same. So it's very close in that sense. So that's kind of where we are. I think, you know, the goal today would be to move forward with a public hearing, potentially move forward with starting the seeker process, and to make the variance referral.
Yeah, I don't know if we're quite at the point to open a public hearing. They have to do lead agency first, but you can if you want.
I'm sort of confused about this project because we haven't seen any plans, have we, at this point?
Do we have the applicant here? I mean, there was a, yeah, I mean, what, we have an application, right? We have a.
Yeah, we have an application.
And it's a site plan is part of the approval on this as well.
Yeah. There are plans on the agenda.
Yeah, we do have plans. I'm trying to pull them up right now. It's going a little slow, but we do have plans. So, so you can see this is the front of the property. Wow, my internet is going kind of slow today. So this is the front of the property. The smaller part is the original part of the property. This is the sort of the new kind of penthouse that they would be adding setback from the front of the property. And then I can work my way down here.
All right, and I do see that JB is in the waiting room. I'm
Yeah,
assuming
JB's
he's-
here and the applicant, Peter Chernoff is here as well.
Okay.
So this is the back of the property. You can see there's some development new in the back here. This is the new development in the front. And
Well, I think it would be okay if we let the applicant in, let Peter and JB in. They can kind of give us, kind of just walk us quickly through the plans, because I mean, there is kind of some substantial things that we need to look at here. So let's go there.
okay. Okay, JB, Peter, you're both in now?
All right, good evening. Thank you for, just wanted to walk you through the project. This is, like Jaime said, this is approximately a 4,000 square feet addition on the rear of the existing 3-story building. And we're gonna, right now it's a mixed-use building, but we're proposing to have 5 units for all residential units. There is no change realistically on the front facade. I don't know if.
So, sorry, JB, could we put the drawings up in front so we can just look at what you're.
Jaime, can you? Which number is this? 21. Oh, you have, okay, so if you can move up I can walk you from the first page.
I apologize. This is moving really slowly. I'm wondering, JB, are you able to pull this up on your side?
Yes.
Just keep in mind, you have to pull up something that's been presented to us and been on, posted. So as long as there's nothing.
I'm sure you'd be quick to point out if there's not, so don't worry.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Let me see if I can, let me zoom. Are you seeing the project or not?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. This, and I'm not sure if it's trying to also having speed issues here. Seems like, here's the floor plan. There's an existing, the existing 3-level property. And we are proposing, like I said before, to put an addition at the rear. It will be about total about 4,000 square feet addition. We also added a penthouse where it will be a 4-story from the Croton Avenue side, and it's actually a 5th-story from the rear because of the property, the way the property lays. Originally, we had intended to use the farm zone, but in order to avoid all these different boards to visit, we decided to choose with the variance.
Maybe I think it's important to note, we didn't decide. We were recommended by the consultant to proceed this way.
Yes.
We did intend to apply under the form-based code, and that was the initial attempt. But they reviewed it and said, no, it's a straighter path. Just getting the variances, just go that way. So we're following their direction and the direction of staff.
Here you see in the front and rear elevation, the proposed, the front elevation, the lighter side, you see that's what is closer to the street. So that is not changing. The fourth floor is recessed. It's about 8 feet recessed in the back. The existing building now, it has the stucco finish over original brick. And I think as per conversations during staff meetings with the village consultants, I think Peter had proposed that we will remove the stucco and restore the front facade to its original brick.
Yes, the neighboring building at 29 has had the brick restored. So the intention is to have these buildings match, as I'm sure they did when they were initially built.
The finish in the back is going to be a stucco. As you can tell, this silhouette is actually building number 29. So this would be looking from the south. And this is Croton Avenue right here. And this is the view from upper Croton Avenue. And it's, again, this is the existing building. This is the existing brick. The side currently is brick. The rear, we're proposing to do a stucco and a light color. We have balconies overlooking taking advantage of the river view. We also did the calculations for the habitable space.
Maybe if I could interject, that side doesn't have the river view, the other side does.
There's the balconies I'm talking about. The
balconies, but an important point is that the windows that you see on the other side lie at the lot line with 29. I also own 29, and the intention is to put a no build easement. Otherwise, those windows wouldn't be legal. So you can be comfortable that we're not coming back to you next month to tell you how we're trying to do the same with 29. The intention is 29 staying just as 29 is, and this addition would be a 31, and there would be a no build easement actually on the deed going forward.
Are those balconies on the lot line?
Yeah. On the side, they're basically these balconies on the rear, or the balconies that are on the side of 29.
Looks like there were balconies on the lot line that would also require some
those are said really Juliet balconies. They're not stepping off over the property line.
Jaime, you were making a note.
Yeah, no, I was just saying that we're going to need a copy of that proposed easement.
Sure.
Okay, so I mean,
and also I think we have in front of the board today is something that I think we had started discussing. I think the last time was a parking waiver, and this is kind of a view of the proposed site plan, the existing site plan. See if I can give you a bit of view. This is the existing building, and this is the proposed addition. And the other thing that we have to discuss, I guess, is the board going to declare, lead agency, which I hope if we can do that today, then we can start moving this forward. And also if we can discuss the parking waiver, which I believe, as we said in our memo, that we do comply with all the requirements of a parking waiver.
Okay. So, I mean, for what at first glance is a small project, I think there is definitely a lot going on here. So, starting with, the parking waiver, I think we can talk about that in a moment as well. I think just the massing and the changes that we're putting in here, it is a substantial addition. If we can go back to the elevations, that might be just a helpful place for us just to start talking. It looks like is that a chimney or a bulkhead that's on the front that's
It's a bulkhead for the stairs.
Okay. If we can get, yeah, the elevation. Yeah, I know this is a little glitchy. That's the stair bulkhead there?
Yes,
That's clad with the paneling?
yes.
Okay.
If I show you, I can show you the slide. That's basically.
And the height,
Yes.
okay, yeah, no, I can see that there. So the heights have been about, there's no, as far as maybe we can just run through the ZBA letter, just while we're looking at all of these, what are the zoning variances that we need to look at here?
I think we asked him for an additional story. In the other, that's the variance number 1. And the other variance will be that under the form code is allowed to have the intention to allow residential on the 4th floor. In this case, because we're not using the form code, we will need a variance in order to have residential on the 4th floor.
So it's just those two, it's just the 5th story and the ground, the ground level residential.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, from Croton Avenue, as you see from the renderings, and if you pull this up on Google Street, you're really looking at a 3-story building. The topography of it is such that by the time you get to the rear, it winds up crossing the threshold to a 5th story. But on Croton Avenue, you're going to be looking at a partial 4th, really.
There's no the height. There's no height issue here. There's no.
Yeah, there is. Yeah. So they need an area variance for height. They're going to need an area variance for stories. They're going to need a conditional use permit for apartments in the VC district. They're going to need a use variance for proposed apartments on the 1st floor. And they're going to need parking waivers for off-street parking, as well as BAR. So I think it's important, it's not really super important like here today. It's going to be an issue that comes up in the zoning board, but there's no conditional use permit for residential in the form-based code under the form-based overlay. There's also no use variance required for apartments on the 1st floor under the form-based overlay. But there are a lot of other elements, that do affect the form-based code. The form really deals a lot more with the form. This building being kind of a retrofit, I think is sort of like largely the reason why. So I think that the intent of the form-based code was to guide with planning principles that they thought made sense, like that residential should be permitted as a use in the VC district, and that in certain sections of the VC district, 1st floor residential was not just a good idea, but was probably more appropriate. And a regulating plan was put together to put that forward. But it's created as an overlay district in part, rather than just replacing the zoning code, because it's clear that if they were to just shift the zoning over in that district, it would render a bunch of properties non-conforming. And so the reason it was sort of created as an overlay is because it allows people who are conforming with the existing district to continue to do that, and people who were able to conform with the new district to be able to use those rules. But we didn't change the rules around whether or not 1st floor residential was appropriate in the VC district. We just use it in the form-based code. But I assume that the applicant is going to use the existence of that form-based code and some of the thought process that went into it through the comp plan process to help guide their application. That's, we haven't seen that application yet, but my guess is that's what's going to be.
And actually, we're just talking about the use change, because that also obviously it ties in very much to the parking waiver issue, right? So I mean, as far as what the parking requirements are right now for the commercial use, I mean, we're making the space, we're adding 4,000 square feet, but it's residential, which has different parking requirements. So we can just kind of look at that kind of calculation and that math and how this will impact parking.
Yeah. So one of the comments from from Keller Sessions under this was essentially that the applicant is requesting a parking waiver for consideration of the planning board as provided for under section 270-30A 12 of the Village Code. The plan indicates a requirement for 10 parking spaces under existing and proposed conditions. We note, however, the calculation provided The parking analysis required minor modification as follows. The parking load for retail space under existing conditions should be 1 space per 250 square feet, resulting in the need for 4.2 parking spaces and a total required parking count of 11 spaces. That's currently. The parking count under proposed conditions correctly indicates the required total of 10 parking spaces. The table should be revised to correctly note that no studio apartments are proposed. So essentially, what they're required to have under the current conditions would need 11 spaces, and what they're proposing would only need 10 spaces. So they've conveyed it as they currently need 10 and they're proposing 10, and it's the same. So it's actually, in that sense, it's more favorable.
So the change in use is reducing the amount of parking that would be required,
By
even,
one-
even as the structure gets larger.
Correct. It's you know, I think it's probably worth noting here. It's 5 units, so it's not you know, it does fall under the threshold of affordable housing ordinance, so they're not required to implement any affordable housing units here as well. So it's relatively speaking, it's falls under the, you know, the level for a lot of the overarching regulations that come in when you get to larger projects.
And to be clear, there is no current parking waiver for the existing structure. It just does not have.
It does not exist, no.
Okay. All right. Members of the board, questions, thoughts? I know there's a lot in here.
I guess I'm really wondering what this, if I don't know which direction, but if I'm behind this building and the street, is that Highland Avenue and I'm looking up at this, would I see it? Would I see the addition? I'd kind of like to see the context in relationship to adjacent buildings and what's behind it and what it looks like from below, or I feel like that would be helpful to see. And I guess I'm also wondering, so is the building currently not in compliance with parking requirements? Given what was just said that it needed 11 spaces and it.
So I can't say definitively whether it is or it isn't, and that's dependent on a few different things. If it had an uninterrupted commercial use from the time prior to the imposition of the parking requirements to now, then no, it would be an existing non-conforming situation. If there had some point in the last 6 years where it's sat vacant for some time and then opened back up, then, you know, potentially it's not, but it has an existing use, it has existing COs, and my understanding is that it is compliant. The absence of a parking waiver doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, that it doesn't exist, or that it's not allowed to be open, or that it's not, you know, in compliance. It just may be, you know, a pre-existing non-conforming condition.
Okay, thanks.
You know, I'm just quickly noticing, but, you know, one of the complications to the site is that it is right on Croton Avenue in a pretty busy intersection. It has limited space. One of the comments from Keller Sessions is that it is sort of a challenging construction site. So I think it would be advisable for the board to request a construction management plan for this project as well, considering the challenging nature of the site. And I think we're going to need a long form EAF as well.
I'm assuming that there's no access to this site from the back, right? There's no adjacent, you know, there's no park. I know you own both properties. There's no
There's
no way
access
around
down
it.
the side, but not from the rear.
Okay.
I mean, that if I were able to make an agreement with a neighbor, there is a driveway and a garage back there, but I don't know how feasible that would be. I mean, we do projects like this all the time. I am primarily an urban developer, so I don't know. From my experience, this doesn't feel like a difficult project at all. We're used to going through attached buildings and having to work that way. So even having the benefit of a side alley is an improvement over what I'm usually doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that even that in mind, your experience in mind, I think that certainly gonna have to close off parking in the front of the building, I would imagine, to get materials in, you're gonna have to make deliveries for stuff, and so.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Need
I
a
mean, we
construction-
would, during a certain period, we'd have to drop off and probably get a dump truck in there to pick up dirt when we're excavating, a couple things like that.
Jaime, that's you controlling the screen. You're pulling up the site, just the Google Earth view of the
Yeah.
site.
That's what I'm trying to do, yeah. I'm all over the place right now, but.
Google Earth is crazy for this section of Croton Avenue. Every time I try and get something delivered, they get lost. You're better off looking for Town Hall and then going across the street from there. Or maybe you got it. I don't.
Yeah, I got it. It's right here.
You got it? Okay.
I'm just, it's these two.
Yeah, I think it's those two.
So you have kind of a minimal walkway through here. I think that's more
Right.
of what I'm trying to convey. Do you have any ability to gain access to the rear of the property?
I would have to talk to that owner. I mean, to make some sort of deal with them. I haven't broached that yet.
And then if we can
Sorry,
just kind of,
sorry.
I mean, and even then, there's a grade issue. That's not level. We'd still be dropping down. It's not as simple as that.
Sorry, I lost connection momentarily, but in speaking with Peter's contractor earlier, just to go along with what Peter was saying, is that it didn't seem to be an issue, and it says that even when you do work in the city, when you have these narrow alleys, there is enough space there to get like motorized wheelbarrows and that they can use to move material back and forth.
I don't think that we're concerned about your logistics, about getting stuff, digging and getting stuff out. It's the trucks that they're going to put it on, and the fact that this is, right near the light at Route 9. So it's, I think we've all been stuck at that for 45 minutes during rush hour, cursing the light every time it changes. So adding those.
Yeah, I mean,
there
the way we usually handle it in the city is really just, we get some guys there early in the morning to get the parking spots and get ready for a truck to come in, get it done and gone. We don't always have the luxury of doing anything other.
Yeah, and we don't need to belabor it right now, but I think, to Jaime's point, looking at the construction management plan and having that up front so we can kind of understand how this will impact everybody.
Sure.
Okay. Are there other board comments or questions at this point? I know there are kind of a couple items now up in the air that we're looking at. So we do have the we have the zoning referral. Maybe we start off with the secret issue, because I do think that there's a lot going on here. My personal opinion is I think it would make sense for us to take lead agency on this, kind of seeing everything that's going on. Other board members agree, disagree?
I agree with
This is-
that.
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nina.
Sorry. I was just going to say, yeah, I agree with that. And I guess one question, looking at that Google map and the drop at the back and everything, I'm also wondering in terms of drainage. Just as an issue.
Are there any lot coverage issues relevant to that as well? Is this, I'm assuming that was calculated by building department.
Yeah, I mean, I think the building, I'm trying to remember what the coverage numbers are in the VC district, but they're pretty high.
I believe it's 100%. So.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I never understood how that's even possible, but that's what the VC zone says.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that, I mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again here. You can start the process, I think, today, but I would hold off on too many questions about seeker until you receive that long form EAF, which is going to get into a lot more detail, which is in this instance going to be necessary. So
that's fair. Mary, so I mean, and Amanda, just in terms of advising us, would it make sense to hold off on any lead agency declaration pending that long form?
Well, I mean, we know the scope of the approvals that are required. you have a bit of a sense of the actual development that's coming before you. I don't know if the long form is really going to make a difference in that sense. I don't know how you feel about that, Jaime. You know,
Yeah, in terms of declaring your intent, I don't think it's going to make any difference. I think it's going to make a difference in the kinds of questions you may ask and
Yeah.
you know, more information that you're going to need. But in terms of declaring your intent, I don't think it's going to make any impact.
no, I think you can, if you feel comfortable that you can handle the review as lead agency, you should go ahead and do that tonight.
All right, well, I think that makes sense. I think if any board members, if everyone's in agreement, I think we can have a motion on that at this point.
Agree. I would like to agree.
So does someone want to make a motion to declare and to declare your intent to serve as lead agency?
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to declare our intent to serve as lead agency.
Michael Aronson, second the motion.
And we'll do a roll call.
Seth Roy?
Aye.
Michael Aronson?
Aye.
Nina Aaron?
Aye.
David Chow?
Aye.
Eric Talbot?
Aye.
And Isabel Nguyen?
Aye.
Great. 6-0 in favor.
Now we also have the ZBA referral for the, I guess this is for the extra additional story, for the additional height, and for the residential use at the ground floor.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you know, because this is an application that requires secret, just like 136 to 140 Croton Avenue, you know, you're referring it to, number one, see if the ZBA has any, you know, really, you know, serious feelings about the variances, but also because they're an involved agency and you would like their, you know, any comments they have on SECRA. So they're not going to be making any, I know this is just a reminder, they're not going to be making any decisions on the variances at this point. This is to get them involved in the SECRA process.
Thank you. Okay, so can we have a motion then to make those referrals to the ZBA?
Michael Aronson, motion to refer the respective items to the ZBA.
Nina Aaron, second.
All right, and we'll do another roll call.
Seth Roy?
Aye.
Michael Aronson?
Aye.
Nina Aaron?
Aye.
David Chow?
Aye.
Eric Talbot?
Aye.
And Isabel Nguyen?
Aye.
Okay, 6-0 in favor.
Okay, great. Now, Jaime, you know, we've kind of gone through a few things. Is there anything documentation wise or anything we didn't discuss here that you feel like we should mention before we close this portion?
You know, I think like the only thing that might help at this point is full color elevations of the proposed project. And I think in this instance, it'd be helpful to have some that show the back of the property, especially where you have the Juliet balconies, the part where you're gonna put in that easement, because that's something that's gonna be a kind of a more important architectural feature. So if they can provide that, that'd be helpful. We just don't know how long this is gonna extend, you know, online, the Zoom meetings. So you may never get a chance to see any materials in person. So that in mind, it's probably a good idea to get the full color.
Well, if I understand correctly, you're asking not just for that, but for some views from a further away vantage point. I think, Michael, you raised that. So, I mean, it slopes off. So the view, it's sort of like it's on that same, the view is sort of the same view that you see where you see the library. So I can think of a couple
I think
of
Michael's asking for one thing and I was kind of asking for something else.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm just saying in addition to what you're saying, I'm saying in addition to that, I guess what we're looking at is vantage point from from Highland Avenue.
Yeah.
Okay,
Highland Avenue, no.
Whatever it is that you would see from, if you would see it, just like Peter, you're referencing the library, you're driving down Route 9 Highland and you look up and you can see the library. I'm just wondering, would we be seeing this, 4-story extension from any
Yeah.
property in the rear or any street in the rear?
yeah, I mean, I can see these buildings from down below, certainly.
So I think it would be helpful to have that
yeah.
context.
Yeah,
Sure.
so what the last applicant did was they did sort of this kind of layered in photo mosaic that shows the real building and the proposed additional as it sits, right? So part of it's gonna be by the library, part of it's going to be the old facade, and there's going to be the new development on top of it. How does that from, maybe a couple of angles on Croton Avenue? What I was asking for, I think, full color elevations in the front is obvious, but more than just that, I think it would be helpful if we have the full color elevations from the rear of the property and the side that has the Juliet balcony. So, because those are highly visible, significant, architectural components of the property.
Sure.
I don't think we don't always ask for like the side views, but I think in this instance, it would make a lot of sense because it is going to be visible. The elevation doesn't need, I don't, I defer to the board here, but I don't think that the elevation needs to be anything more than just the same elevation, but, with the, the full color of how it's going to look, with a better sense of this, right?
As long as that's provided in conjunction with the renderings that we're asking for, the kind of insight rendering, so we kind of see how it looks in context. It's a lot of building, it's stucco. If it's gonna be visible, we want to see what that'll look like for sure.
Sure.
And I definitely agree with Michael as far as the North Highland views, just looking up at that, because it could be quite prominent. And having that, the kind of the empty photo, the existing condition with, how it'll change when this comes in.
Okay.
All right. Anything else from any board members or Jaime before we move on to the last item on the agenda?
I just want to bring up one point that I wanted to make before we left this topic. In looking at the Google Maps, just quickly, I know that you're going to have different conditions in winter versus summer. There are trees behind the applicant's building, so that will, it appears, I'm not, at street level. I was trying to look in that respect, but so there may be more screening in the, in the months where there's foliage than there will be in the winter. So I don't know if that's something that a consideration want to be taken in, if that should be taken into consideration in, the creation of those elevations and drawings.
So do you want like a leaf on and a leaf off?
Well,
rendering?
I think that unless clearly, I think it would be, I definitely need to, I just want to put that out there and see what the rest of the board members think, really.
I think that's a good point, yeah.
I think if the rendering was proposed with the leaves off, right, that would give us the highest visibility rather than making them go through.
I was just going to propose that a winter view probably is the.
Yeah, winter changes a lot. I can see these buildings from my house at 28 North Malcolm. When all the trees come down, you guys know well. The vantage points in Ossining become markedly different in the dead of winter.
If it's easy enough and you have a photo, not a rendering, but just if you're using a winter view photo for your rendering, for winter view photo for the rendering, and you have what it looks like in the summer with the leaves, without just kind of a plain old photo, just showing that site, that might, if you have that could be helpful just to show how much leaf cover really is there. But the winter view rendering, I think, makes sense. Okay. All right, I think that's good. So thanks, and I guess we'll kind of move on now to the next agenda item. Thanks,
All right, thank you.
All right, guys. All right, so the next item on the agenda, this is kind of an additional items. This is not a public hearing. We're going to kind of go back to 14 Water Street. So, you know, we're not taking any action here. Jaime, you can kind of give us where we
Yeah,
are.
so there's two main topics I think we want to discuss today. There are a couple of open items that were in the, what they're calling the construction logistics plan. And want to kind of get into the details of the neg deck. I think it might make sense to probably start off the conversation with the neg deck and sort of integrate the discussion about the CLP open items in there, because they're kind of one and the same. So with that, I don't know, Amanda, do you want to kind of take over the beginning of the discussion on that? Or not? It's okay if you don't. If you'd like to. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, so later this afternoon, we were able to circulate a draft of the negative declaration, which is on the agenda for any of the public to look at. And I can pull it up now as well. We are all looking. And I believe that the applicant also received it directly. Unfortunately, because just working internally and making sure that comments were addressed and all that, we couldn't get it to you sooner, but we'll hopefully have everything, all I's dotted and T's crossed in time for the December meeting. And then hopefully you can take a vote on it at that point. So basically this is just the resolution that you would adopt in December. That's the form for it. This is your form negative declaration. And then the meat and potatoes of this, so to speak, is the reason supporting the determination, which goes through all of the factors that you discussed at length in the last few meetings that are outlined in the EAF Part 2. I also added a section on land use and zoning considerations to talk about the specific compliance with the SPN, the rationale and the purpose of the SPN district. I'm having trouble with words today. As well as a section talking about the conditional use permit requirements in the SPN. So that's what this section goes through to make sure that the neg deck addresses those specific items. And then we get into the specific EAF pieces, which land and geological features, discusses the area of the site, as well as specifically slopes, the fact that slopes will be disturbed, but you all discussed at your last meetings that given the situation of the site and specific factors in the EAF workbook, that this would, that there would be, all no or small impact for all of the factors, in the EAF Part 2, hence why the reasons in support of this determination are written as they are. This impact on land and geological features also discusses the applicant's geotech engineering report from April, what it initially said, and then discusses the fact that we've received updated information that affects what sort of underpinning and monitoring of neighboring properties will be needed, and how the consulting engineer feels that there's adequate space to install excavation support on the 14 Water Street property, and if any underpinning or additional monitoring of adjacent properties is determined to be necessary during the during the construction process, That's certainly something that the building department can address directly, which is well within their expertise and their authority. Moving on to water, and we can definitely stop me if you have questions or issues, but this should all track with your prior discussions. That's the intent. Water discusses the fact that there are no surface water features, indicates that groundwater is pretty deep on the site, but if any water is encountered during construction, they'll have to implement proper dewatering and containment, systems. That's all building department enforced. And then it discusses the stormwater improvements that they'll be making, as well as infiltration that they're going to be adding around the building itself, with the intent to make sure that stormwater doesn't run onto neighbors' properties, but instead goes directly into the village's stormwater system. Then I addressed noise, light, and air quality all in one section, long-term and then short-term separately. For noise, light, and air, there really are no long-term environment. There are no long or short-term adverse environmental impacts that will be expected as a result of this project. And specifically with regard to the short-term impacts of these three issues, the construction logistics plan plays an important part. It governs, time of construction hours. The applicant is expected to have their equipment in good repair and follow best management practices. Any lighting during construction is now addressed in the construction logistics plan. That had been an open item per Kellard Sessions, but that's been updated. There'll be string lighting on every floor within the building during construction. And if I'm wrong, the applicant can correct me, but that's now stated specifically in the plan. And as you know, from a photometric plan that was submitted, they've eliminated spillover onto the neighboring property. So there should be no long-term light impacts as a result of the development. And then air quality. So I talked about air quality and noise. Those both relate to best construction management plan, best practices, good equipment maintenance, and following the village's, stated times and hours for construction. That construction logistics plan also now states that construction won't take place on Sundays and holidays. For plants and animals, we had to discuss the fact that the EAF mapper talked about the short-nosed sturgeon, eastern mud turtle, and the Atlantic sturgeon being identified in the area, but there are really no habitats apparently on this site for those. So that doesn't appear to be an impact we need to worry about. This section focuses on trees and should reflect the discussion that you had at the last meeting regarding DBH. Total DBH was 76 minus the 23-inch unhealthy box elder results in 53-inch DBH that will be replaced off-site. And that is something that, as I remark in here, will be addressed at a later date with DPW, the tree warden, and the Recreation and Parks Department. But we have it in here that because the site cannot sustain any tree replacements, they're going to be replaced off-site. And it also acknowledges the off-site 27-inch Norway maple, which the applicant has now obtained consent to remove. The next category is agricultural resources, which I spend a sentence indicating there will be no impacts. I don't think we need to detail why. Aesthetic resources, we discussed I believe a couple meetings ago, you know, impacts of this building and whether it would be visible from various vantage points. According to the EAF, there's a publicly accessible aesthetic resource within 5 miles of the site, which is the Hudson River. So, you know, I kind of address here, how is the building, I'm sorry, I keep saying the building, but really it's the proposed action, which includes the building. How is the proposed action going to affect the Hudson River? And so this section talks about, you know, what you all talked about at your last few meetings, which is that there's lots of other buildings in the area that are of a similar scale. It shouldn't impact the Hudson River any more than existing buildings already do. That's the gist of that. There's also, it's so funny, this is such an interesting site. There's also the Ossining Railroad Station is eligible for inclusion on either the state or National Register of Historic Places. So we had to address whether there would be any impacts on that. There could be some temporary traffic impacts during construction, but again, the construction logistics plan, which I discussed further down here, should address temporary traffic impacts, and any temporary impact to the railroad station as a result of construction should be minimal. And as far as any aesthetic impact or any impacts on the historical or archaeological character of the railroad station, again, sort of similar to the aesthetic resources category, I don't see how, and I don't think that the board sees how this building will have any impact any more so than in any of the other buildings in the area. Open space and recreation. This is an addition from Kellard Sessions. We added that based on the size of the units, there is expected to be a resident population of 8 people based on a reputable. Rutgers is basically the source that we always use when we're discussing occupancies of residences. And I added, you know, the nearby parks and open spaces. These 8 new residents likely will not have an impact on our parks in the village. The site is also located in a critical environmental area. So, like I said, this is a special site. The critical environmental area is again the Hudson River, which was designated by the county. But because the Hudson River is far enough away, you know, the scope of the project, we say here that there seems to be no reason to expect that there will be any adverse environmental impacts on the river. And then impact on transportation is, I discussed more the construction logistics plan. Specifically, these are some new details. The fact that, and actually they're not quite that new because the applicant discussed these at the last meeting. He told you these verbally, that excavation trucks will back into the site so that they won't block the road. Materials will be stockpiled only on the site, and the applicant is going to work with the village to obtain parking permits for their construction workers. And that is actually something that they've already begun working with the village clerk. And I don't have the newest
I have a small update. Yeah, I can give you a little update. So spoke with the clerk, spoke with Corporation Council about this. They are going to be offered a number of parking permits that would be essentially terminated with the building permit. So in order to receive the building permit, they would have to get those permits. You know, we're guessing somewhere around 6 or 8 permits. They would get them at the village rate. So that it would be the same rate that if you live there, you would pay for one of those village permits, and they will be made available. We have a similar deal with Riverkeeper, where Riverkeeper buys like a batch of them for their employees. Works exactly the same way. And you know, for the edification of the applicant who's here, Riverkeeper is a business that, it's a nonprofit organization that's, down the block from essentially from where you are there. So, so it's a similar setup, and the clerk said it would be no problem.
Yeah, that's really good news.
Yeah, just a condition of the building permit.
Yeah, that's all for the purpose of keeping street parking available for residents. And then the CLP also addresses complete road closure of Water Street, and discusses, which the applicant also discussed at the last meeting, how in that event, traffic would be routed to Depot Plaza and Main Street. They would use signage and flaggers and to make sure that everybody's safe and can still access what they need to. And any street residents would be assisted by the flagmen. We also added some language here that any street closures would have to be in consultation with the police department. The CLP is obviously subject to final review and approval, as well as enforcement by the building inspector, but I'm assuming, based on all the discussions that we've had, that this CLP probably addresses a lot of the issues that have been raised by the proposed action, and hence why there's language here that it addresses the concerns associated with temporary construction, traffic, and parking issues. This section also discusses just the parking load and the fact that they're going to be asking for a parking waiver down here. It discusses the fact that the site is somewhat constrained in terms of space, and we learned early on in this hearing process that parking on site would be extremely difficult for them to provide due to the size of the site, hence why the waiver is being requested. And I also discuss here the Croton Manning parking study, what you learned from the parking study, and that there was parking that they found to be available within a 6-minute walk, enough to require at that point, the required 20 spaces. So there certainly should be enough at this point to accommodate the 8 spaces now that the project's been scaled down. Energy and infrastructure, there will be an increase in demands, obviously, on the village's utility infrastructure as a result of a new building being added. However, this site is able to hook up to municipal sewer and water, electric, telephone, cable, etc. And the applicant's also constructing additional improvements to the stormwater system. There's also some, I don't know if these, I think this number is not right. But the applicant can tell me if I'm wrong here. I think this is supposed to be a slightly lower number. But anyway, the loads here,
Is not in, the applicant's not currently in the,
Yeah,
this
the
room.
applicant is here, but they're not raising their hands.
Okay.
We can go back and check with Keller Systems on that.
Yeah, sorry, that was just me.
Right. It may be a number prior to the removal of some of the uses.
Yeah, no, I think actually, don't worry. I was just thinking out loud. We can confirm. And it talks about the fact that the applicant made concessions as to the permitted uses based partly on sewer load. And that this capacity, the 2 capacities here, water and sewer, have been, it's been determined that there's capacity to handle these. Impact on human health addresses the fact that we've received 2 environmental site assessments. There's going to be some remediation that needs to be done, including the UST removal, and any contaminated soils need to be disposed of at a registered facility. They will have to do that in accordance with county requirements. The phase 2 ESA also indicated that some soil vapor issues could be present, but they already know that they'll have to install a soil vapor barrier if those exceedances are a problem. And again, they'll have to be following county, state, DEC requirements with respect to that soil vapor barrier. So I do not expect there to be any significant adverse environmental impacts on human health. And then we get into consistency with the community plan, which is really specific to the comp plan. And Jaime definitely helped add some color here with respect to the 2021 comp plan. It just talks about, you know, mixed use is encouraged in this area. This type of development can help encourage us, the village, moving away from a bedroom community, and can add, you know, more action during the day, help our businesses during the day. And it's consistent in terms of getting our buildings away from, you know, such flood prone design by getting residential off of the ground floor. And then lastly, consistency with community character. You all had a very lengthy discussion on this, and you determined that it is, while it's not exactly similar to the two houses on either side of it, when you pull out a little bit, you know, look at the greater area along Water Street and Main Street and Depot Plaza, there are a variety of uses, a variety of different size buildings in the area, and the neighborhood as a whole seems to be consistent with this type of building and this type of development. So that's what this says. And I basically just read you the whole negative declaration. Without,
You actually did.
I'm sorry, that wasn't really my intent, but it's just what happened.
It's all right. Thank you, Amanda.
Since it got to you late, I figured maybe you all hadn't had a chance to read it.
I did my best on the train ride on my way home today. So
thank you.
Yep. So I mean, I feel like that draft, I think, is a very clear and accurate representation of the many conversations and you know, discussions that we had as a board as part of this process. So thank you. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, essentially at this point, what I would add to this is that largely the applicant has tried to be as responsive as possible, as quick as possible. So they didn't get a lot of the comments that we had until pretty late. They did add, they tried to, I think they followed up with pretty much everything that was requested in Keller sessions. I don't believe that there was anything other than sort of open questions about the parking for the construction workers, which we've covered since then. But they provided it early. In general, we want to make sure that things are handed over in a timely manner, not just so that this board can review it and so staff can review it, but also so the public can review it. And so even though the neg deck is in a, probably pretty close to shape to what it's going to be at the end, and Amanda, don't let me speak for you, but we're not recommending that any action be taken on this today. We still want to queue this up for, the December 21st meeting to allow everybody ample time to review it.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, not tonight. I mean, since it's not a formally noticed application tonight anyway, it's not the best idea. And thank you, Eric, for, I thought it was a little bit off.
Yeah. There are some people from the community that are here today. I know that we had discussed that probably this wasn't going to be a public forum, but there are some people from the neighborhood that are here. I think that last I checked, it's an option of the board whether or not you want to hear from those members of the public or not on this, even though it's not a formally noticed public hearing. It wasn't in the agenda that was posted in the newspaper, but I think you do have the discretion to hear from people from the public if you wanted to. Not that anybody is right now raising their hand.
Right. Yeah, I mean, my plan coming into this meeting was it was kind of like a work session where we'd have the opportunity to discuss and review, what was sent to us, and the responses that have happened very late. So I think to give the board members an opportunity to digest that, we are going to reopen the public hearing at our next meeting. We're not taking any action tonight. I think that I think it makes sense to look at this as a work session, and I'm glad that the neighbors are here and listening to this, and can formulate thoughts and questions that they may want to pose to us, or at our next meeting. But thank you, Jaime, for bringing that to our attention. If any board members disagree with me, that's absolutely okay. That's my opinion. So, okay. All right. Jaime or Amanda, is there anything else you think that we should be discussing on this while we have this opportunity on 14 Water Street?
Jaime, should we be pulling? I mean, I think I hit the CLP high points as far as what. Did you say the only real open issue as far as the CLP was parking, and then everything else has been incorporated? Because
yeah, that was that's my recollection based off of the conversation we had with
Keller
session yesterday, when we were going over the agenda. So that is my recollection. Here's the CLP. So it has a revision 1 and revision 2 details in here. So I think that if you're able to go through this, or when you're able to go through this, you can kind of see within it, the changes that have been made. But they're overall pretty responsive. I would defer to Keller Sessions, honestly, to be able to get back and having taken a look at this to provide some comments on the memo to clarify whether their questions were satisfied or not. So they're not here today, and I don't want to speak too much on their behalf.
I think that's fair. And so, that'll also give us another opportunity to speak with them next week, because they're the ones who did the thorough review of this. Okay. All right. So any
yeah, so there is one additional item. So it's worth stating on the record here that the applicant has requested that they would really like to see this voted on at the December 21st meeting. They'd like to see a vote on the seeker item. They'd like to see a vote on the parking waivers. I think it's their goal to have all of the votes take place before the end of the year. That is their goal. That does not need to be your goal. So I think that keep that in mind. They are here, so if you'd like to hear from them directly about this, but that's certainly. I don't want to not mention that, because they have reached out and mentioned that to us, that's their goal. So,
I mean, and that's fair. I think that kind of pertinent to my comment before regarding hearing from the public right now, I think having this as an internal kind of board work session where we can work out these items, I think is important for us tonight. As far as our goal is to make sure that we're vetting this properly and on behalf of kind of fulfilling our responsibility. So if we have everything that we need and feel comfortable voting at the end of this month, then we'll definitely do that. But only if we feel comfortable at that point. So I don't think we can say that with any certainty right now. And again, I appreciate you, Jaime, bringing their concerns to our attention. And again, I would just open this up to the board if anybody else wants to react to that.
I have a comment, and it's more of a bigger picture item, and it's specific to this project, but it's more related to this process and me thinking like down the road for the next application. And I don't want to go too far into like that scenario, so I'll keep it brief. But I found this particular application challenging for a number of reasons. Particularly the zoning as of right. And I think that it's challenging as a planning board to balance the interest between the existing community and what developers are proposing when, the zoning may not be sensitive to the existing community. And I really think it's something that the Board of Trustees have to look at, because I feel like although, we haven't had dozens of people at the meeting, we have consistently had feedback about this. And I just think looking at the zoning table for the other districts, I know the VC district is 100% coverage. I know that Station Plaza North and Station Plaza South are 100% coverage, 0 lot lines, I believe. And there may be some other places that have some 0 setbacks, but I just, I think it's really important to be mindful and thoughtful of the existing community and to balance that, in the approval of these applications. And I felt like many times that the applicant wasn't exactly getting what they wanted. the community wasn't getting exactly what they wanted. I didn't feel like as a planning board, we had a lot of, and I appreciate what they did. I think they really did come around and reshape it to meet like, what we was more reasonable in that particular space. But I did find it, I'll be honest with you, I found it a little frustrating. And I do think that the Board of Trustees has to like evaluate this area and look at it and see if there's any, if there's amendments that need to be made. We should at least make a recommendation for them to look at this. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate the way you expressed your concerns about the challenge of this project, and I definitely would concur.
Yeah, me as well. It's there was certainly some unique challenges here. It is an unusual site for a lot of reasons, and I think that came up during Amanda's reading as well. Dealing with dealing with the neighborhood, and then kind of these unique kind of circumstances, mostly related to the proximity of the river. But yeah, I mean that neighborhood, and there was a letter a very heartfelt letter, I think, from a consultant and Austin resident, Mr. Fry, who spoke about the history of the neighborhood, which is, I don't know if we ever addressed that kind of specifically on the record. That's also something to think about, as part of this project. These are all, as Eric, I think, very articulately expressed, make this a difficult project to review.
And if we are going to bring something like, as Eric is saying, to the Board of Trustees, we had spoken before also in terms of parking in this area of, potentially making a recommendation to the Board of Trustees on that as well, with the fact that right now so much, even on streets down there, Water Street, and I forget the name of the other one, and around the train station, so much of it is still permit. Whereas, the permit spaces are not being used, and yet there's very little parking available that's not strictly permit. It's as if we've sort of in a 2-year lag, still treating it as if it's pre-pandemic. And it seems to me like a terrible waste to do that. It's a good opportunity to say, well, let's adjust it. I mean, even if it ends up being adjusted later again, just to make it more usable. So I would add that to what Eric has already said. I mean, zoning is difficult to try and make everything fit, but you made some really good points, Eric.
I'm just recalling now that we did have some discussions about putting an item on the agenda to discuss in a work session about this letter. I'm not sure if it did actually make it to one of our agendas, but we didn't talk about it. It's 9:20, so it's not that late. If you would like to start, now I'm certainly comfortable. It may make sense to close out this agenda item, but if you want to spend a few minutes at the end of the meeting talking about it, we can start working on putting together a letter and have something to present back to you, maybe even by the December meeting, to discuss this more, because obviously this is the third time I think that we've talked about the need for this letter to go to the Board of Trustees. This is probably as good a time as any to start putting that letter together.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree as well. I think we can close out the 14 Water Street conversation at this point. And just, I think, we put 10 minutes into this conversation, into this topic right now, so we can look at, the framework of what it is that we're trying to say to the board on that parking issue, especially. I mean, my one biggest concern with this is kind of the uncertainty in terms of what parking is going to look like, a year from now, forget about 5 years from now. And as a almost 5 day a week commuter, I've certainly seen the use of the trade, from, whatever, from the beginning of this calendar year till now, it's definitely been, a several-fold increase, but nowhere near, where it was before the pandemic. I don't know if there's any research or documentation or what's out there right now in terms of predictions and crystal balls and work patterns.
I have a couple of comments here about that. So there are some preliminary studies that have started looking at the different trends of how people are working, how people are not going back to 5 days a week full time. People are starting to go into these hybrid systems. These are becoming more permanent. There's even discussion about moving towards 4-day work weeks in certain parts of the country as a more standard process. So the likelihood is that the parking demand's probably not going to go back to what it was. I'm going to look for some stuff there. But, as a general statement, I think that it's important that you first consider the needs of the people who live immediately there in that neighborhood. And you secondarily consider the needs of the larger community. And so to sort of forego the needs of the people who live there, who have no choice but to be there every single day, and make them secondary to people who only show up for 8 or 10 hours a day, just doesn't seem equitable, right? And it's, I think that you're gonna have to determine what kind of information you want to put into that letter. But for me, the heart of the problem is that the neighborhood, the people who live there now, their parking needs have been treated as secondary to the commuter who may not even be spending any time in that neighborhood, let alone, much time in the village at all. They may not even live in the village. And so, that doesn't seem equitable. And the fact that you sort of can marry that into other equity issues, the fact that it's majority, persons of color community, it's a historically African-American community, that there are, long-term environmental justice issues because of the fact that they had, this long-term historical African-American community next to a lot of, heavy industrial uses, coal tar. It has all those concerns of equity. To me, I think it's pretty plain.
Before we go too in-depth on this particular discussion, which I think is very worthwhile to happen tonight, I think first of all, can we stop sharing the 14 water information? And I just wanted to emphasize that, I understand you all, it sounds like, a significant number of the board struggled with this application, but something to remember is that despite the fact that this proposed action doesn't look like it's going to, be resulting in a positive declaration and didn't result in significant adverse environmental impacts rising to the level of a positive declaration, doesn't mean that the board can't impose requirements and conditions that deal with impacts that don't reach that level as part of its site plan approval authority. So that's something to think about for the December 21st meeting. If you're going to be, we're already planning to vote on the secret determination at that meeting, but if you're going to be thinking about doing any other voting, it's something to consider, what other conditions or requirements might be something that you want to impose as part of your site plan authority to, make this a project that you think is going to work for everyone, potentially. Don't forget that you have that additional authority. And just because, this might have not gone to a positive declaration doesn't mean, you can't deal with impacts in some other way.
Thanks, Amanda.
So does that mean we are done with 14 water at this point and we're officially moving on to?
Yes, we can officially move on.
All right.
Yeah, and there's no need to motion out of this because this is not really there's no public hearing, there's no,
No, I think it's good to have a clear demarcation in the record.
Yeah.
All right.
Fair, understood. and
Think
agreed.
about everything I said and then just move it forward.
Yes, that we do want as part of it.
Right.
Bifurcate those two items, right?
Right. Well, there was a little bit of a little carryover because this conversation is coming out of another, but it's this, now we are starting a discrete conversation solely about this recommendation to the board, potential recommendation to the board of trustees. Okay, I mean, kind of following up on Jaime's comments, I think it'd be great to hear from folks kind of on how we could kind of think about and formulate kind of recommendations on how, I guess we are specifically speaking about parking and how how those spaces can be apportioned and kind of more equitably and kind of more kind of relevant to current usage patterns, both of those things, but putting the neighborhood first, as Jaime pointed, I think is, as it sounds obvious, but I guess it isn't always really, really important.
Are we, and I do want to just echo that I really appreciated your comments, Jaime. I thought they were, right on target, and really affirmed, what I think we should be thinking about in this context. But I guess I'm wondering, are we going to be making sort of specific recommendations to the Board of Trustees? Like, for example, there's, X amount of parking spaces that we think could be dedicated for neighborhood use, non-permit, or are we going to speak more sort of globally or conceptually about, the zoning that exists and the inconsistencies, or what is going to be our intent here?
Yeah, I think that it'd be better if you spoke about it more globally and identifying the problem that you found and asking the Board of Trustees to look into solutions to fix that problem. Ultimately, it's their decision on how to deal with the parking standards. It's their decision on how to deal with, the parking lots and whether you have tag parking or parking on the street or, any number of different solutions. And so it's probably best for them to figure that out. And it's probably important for them to have an understanding of the scale of the problem, whether they need to find 40 spots on the street or 20 spots on the street or 80 spots on the street, and you sort of scale their approach, their responses to the demand that exists. I don't know offhand, how many parking spots are really needed in that area, but that's probably more a factor of the number of housing units that are in the area right now, minus the amount of off-street parking that's available. So, that's something that requires more research. So the global identification of the problem that you think the BOT can solve is probably the most useful. And if they want to, present a solution and bring it back to the planning board, then they can do that. And if they want to come up with a solution on their own and just sort of like move forward with it, they might be able to do that as well. I don't think that off-street parking regulations are the kind of thing that needs to get referred out to the planning board. So, ultimately, it's gonna rest with them.
Well, I think if parking is in the zoning code and they're amending the zoning code, then it would need a referral to the planning board unless that's changed in the code.
I think as it relates to like off-street parking. So the way that it works in this village is that you can't park on street overnight anywhere except for designated streets.
Yep, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And so that's outside of the zoning code. And then there are, the usage of the municipal parking lots, how they're used and who can park in them in the evenings. And I think that's outside of the zoning code as well. So
yeah, you're right.
I mean, this board started talking about this issue when we had kind of two projects right up against each other requesting very similar parking waivers in an area where, there was no way that anybody could ever do any work or build anything or change the use of an existing structure and be able to accommodate that parking at the same time that we're looking at these kind of seas of empty parking spots. So, I think as far as defining the problem, I think the problem lies, I think, somewhere in that space. contrast. No parking available to the projects that are being presented to us and being proposed. Yet there's a kind of this excess of unused parking, related to the pandemic or not, but it's definitely there right now.
All right. I mean, are there other elements of what's going on down there, that any other aspects of the parking, you know, that you want us to put into that letter?
The only other thing that comes up is just the zoning. You know, Amanda was alluding to zoning, parking requirements, and if those requirements, you know, are kind of so onerous as to be impossible to achieve, you know, is there a way to change that as well, or to look into that problem?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't really know where to like approach this about what I'm going to say here, but you know, the community, the next door neighbors have felt like this project, as it's come forward, the 14 Water Street project, as it came forward, was using a zoning, was using essentially zoning requirements that they felt were imposed on the neighborhood, that they didn't really understand, they didn't know them, nobody told them that it was rezoned, that were not in character with what, you know, they and their, you know, neighbors really wanted to see in the neighborhood. And so sort of in conjunction with the comment you just made about how the zoning, you know, creates this parking problem for everybody just due to the nature of the size of the lots and everything else. Do you think it makes sense to add to that note something, you know, requesting that the Board of Trustees re-examine the, you know, the zoning in general down there? Or are you comfortable with the zoning as it is down there? Do you not really have any conflict? You know,
to me, that's a tricky question, and because, you know, going through the whole environmental, the whole SECRA letter this evening, kind of just, you know, a reminder of the comp plan and kind of the, you know, the location of this site and kind of the contemporary, you know, you know, the existing use is different from what the comp plan really wants in that area. But the comp plan is looking, I think, at a bigger picture. It's not looking at the individual houses. It's saying, you know, based on kind of the needs of the community now in 2021, what makes sense for the community. And so that you know, and that's, you know, that's another friction. I mean, I feel like that's, at the end of the day, that's the biggest friction that we're looking at in this project, which is kind of what the kind of the village is looking at now, for that portion versus kind of how it was historically, you know, used, and, you know, the old zoning or prior to zoning, those houses were prior to zoning rules. So, I mean, I don't know how other board members feel. I feel conflicted on that question, on the degree to which the zoning should be changed in that area. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. I would actually just note, for those of us who were on the board a year ago, and I don't know whatever happened with it, but I know there was a request for a zoning amendment on that block, on the other side of the block, looking to allow as of right residential on the ground floor. And I think that's relevant to this discussion too. Is that something that would, I mean, kind of the usage for residential versus commercial was also part of the conversations from the neighbors. I don't think they were thrilled with the multifamily residential either, but you know, we spent a lot of time talking about the conditional uses that might be allowed here and writing some of those out. So maybe there is some space in the zoning to look at that if it is the second time this is kind of being discussed. I don't know.
I think it's not just this neighborhood. To what Jaime was saying previously, there are issues about the way things are done generally, not through any fault of anyone's, but, you know, the environmental justice questions, the kind of both historically and then now, it's very hard. I know how hard the village worked to get information out about that comprehensive plan, and yet it is clear when you hear from this neighborhood, they did not feel involved. in that process, and probably would have had things to say had they been, because it's hard to reach people. It just is. So I don't know whether there, I think there's questions in here that are bigger than just this neighborhood. I think it has to do with how we do outreach, how decisions are made, who's consulted, all of that stuff, and correcting things that have been wrong. In that neighborhood, for sure, there are things that have been wrong. Indeed, the coal tar, there's no greenery down there to speak of. There's this little group of houses stuck up against a lot of other uses, and to Jaime's point, that have been given more credence than the people that live there. But I don't think that is restricted only to this area. I mean, I think there's a bigger issue in other parts of the village that this would apply to as well. I don't know how we address it. I really don't, but how we open that up.
I mean, one of the things that when I talk about that, and I think that's right, and I know communicating with the comp plan, I think those issues, communication and neighborhood input, I think are always a struggle for kind of any process like this. I do bring it back to this neighborhood. One of the unique things about this neighborhood and this lot is this whole, it's like a zoning, it's a zone of one block, right? This is the Station Plaza, right? So it's like these very peculiar requirements put on this one, literally this kind of unusually shaped lot on this big steep hill, which has had a lot to do with this particular application as well. So I do think it's all of these things. I think there are some some items particular to this neighborhood, but yeah, I agree that kind of process wise that you can kind of look at this throughout the village.
All right. I mean, Amanda, do you think that we have enough that maybe we can reconvene and try to start putting together something?
Yeah, I mean, some of these are, I think we're gonna need to have to focus it a little bit. But I definitely feel like, yes, we can put at least a draft together to talk about at the next meeting.
Thanks, guys. All right, so before we totally close out, we do have the minutes that were distributed for our October meeting. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to take a look at those. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes? Any comments on the minutes? And if not, a motion to approve them?
Michael Aronson, motion to approve the minutes from the October 26th meeting.
Second. Anybody?
David, I don't think was there, so I don't think he should vote on the.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Is there any? Can somebody please provide a second? Somebody who was in attendance at the October meeting.
I was there. I will second the motion.
Thank you, Eric. All right. Are there any objections? With no objections, the motion passes. The minutes are approved.
One last item I want to mention before everybody leaves. You have to do training every year. And I'm sure everyone here has done all their training. But if you haven't done all your training, there are still opportunities to do some trainings. So please reach out to Jamie or to me and get your training hours in before the end of the year.
I'm doing mine. I've done most of mine.
All right. Isabel, you're new. I don't know if you've done some training already.
This is the first time I've heard of it. So I probably have to reach to you and Jamie offline and discuss what that is.
Okay. All right. Yeah, please. Definitely if Jamie, how many hours is it again? Is it 2 hours, 4 hours? 4 hours, right?
It's 4 hours for the year. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So if you haven't gotten 4 hours and when I mean gotten 4 hours, what I mean is you've gotten the certifications and everything over to Jamie so that we have the verified proof that you did it, then, you know, we need to get either that information back to us or you need to get the training done. There's a lot of stuff out there still. There's land use law institute, I think is coming up with some training soon.
Yep, the PACE conference starts on Monday.
Yeah.
So yeah, please get out to us as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Got it. I'll take a look and review and get back. Thanks.
All right, great.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks, Jaime. All right, guys, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Eric Talbot, I make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
China Aaron second.
Any objections? No objections, the motion passes. All right, thanks, guys, I appreciate it. And also, we'll see you right before the holiday, so we don't say
Right.
happy holidays.
See you soon.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a
Good night,
night.
everybody.